Hey,
Hey.
I like that new intro because it reminds me because that's at the end when I'm walking with the ship. It's from London, and it was such a good KubeCon in London.
Oh, that was a
We had a
great
lot of
time.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite cities. So it's too bad they keep us stuck at that conference center so much of the time because it's like there's all this cool stuff to go do and see, and yay, London.
Yeah. Yeah. The venue
I
wasn't too bad for that
the
one,
what?
but
Oh well,
me and you had a great time. Me, you, and
yeah, and the weather
had a
was
great time.
amazing. So every time we got to
Yes.
step outside, it was like, oh, it's not raining in London. It was
Yeah.
not cloudy. It was sunny, and people were out getting suntans. Like it was.
Yeah.
Hi, Nirmal.
Hey, Matt. Hey. Hi,
Welcome
Brett. How are
back.
you?
Good. Welcome
Thanks.
back.
Uh,
We were just talking before the show how busy we are coming up to peak conference season. I think at least for
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Um, I
We got
all things open was
KubeCon.
this week, wasn't it? Like, was
It
it
was, and unfortunately, I missed it. So
same?
this is exactly what you're talking about. Like, there's so October's just the month for events. Like, I think when you do an analysis of the calendar and try to find a time where people are available, traveling is easier, weather is relatively decent everywhere, it's not too hot or cold. October just ends up being that month.
Yeah.
But it but everyone chooses that month.
Right. Right, and you
uh,
have your own event because you do a big Halloween thing, so you
I
got all
do a
that
big
work.
Halloween. Yeah, so that's end of next week. So we've been preparing for that, which, is one of like 10 things going on. um, and is not a small feat. And shout out to Kristen for doing an amazing job building out our Halloween displays this year, Stranger Things themed.
Stranger
And then,
Things.
yeah, great show. That was, if you haven't checked it out on Netflix, check it out. Unpaid sponsor. Unpaid call out.
Yeah.
And then we've got, events like KubeCon North America and, for my day job, AWS reInvent's coming out in the beginning of December, which sounds like so far away, but it's like here.
Yeah. Yeah, and for Cube, we'll both be at KubeCon. It's
Yes.
Atlanta. It's in Atlanta, and I'm going to be doing some fun talks around CVEs on Kubernetes and vulnerabilities in
Nice.
Kubernetes images. That's going to be some fun stuff. You're doing AWS stuff. Are you doing any booth talks or anything?
Yeah, we've got an AWS booth. We're going to have a bunch of really cool demos of all kinds of things related to Kubernetes and our AWS services. So come check that out. Especially, you know, I mean, what is it? What is not being covered these days? Things like Gen AI, agentic architectures, EKS auto mode, um, all the cool things. Big scale on Kubernetes. I saw a post somewhere. Someone, maybe it was a blog post or some kind of content around someone trying to build a million node cluster on Kubernetes or something like that. Have you heard about this?
No,
I gotta find that. Anyways, that's
a
that's
million
KubeCon. We'll be there. We'll be hanging out. So it's the closest KubeCon to both of us, probably
ever.
ever.
Right. I don't know that there'll ever be
uh,
one closer than Atlanta.
no,
Maybe
no.
if DC. I don't know if you're closer to DC than
DC.
Atlanta,
I am
Washington DC.
closer to DC.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I wonder why DC's never been chosen for KubeCon. Um, but
Well,
that might happen at some
we,
point.
I'd rather not go right now. But if I don't know of a big. Is there a conference center in DC that can handle 12,000 people?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
okay.
Yeah. The Washington Convention Center, DC Convention Center could
Yeah, I've
definitely
never
handle
been.
that.
I've only been to small venues. I don't know what's going on with my voice. I've never been to small venues like, or usually at small venues like the museum, which doesn't even
The
exist
museum was
anymore.
very popular, yeah, as
Um,
a venue for a bit.
you and I were there. I think there's actually a photo in the intro of the show now that from there
Yeah,
because
man,
those were
that
such
was
good memories of like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years where we were going to these Docker events in Washington D.C. and they were primarily for the federal government.
Right.
So they had like a nice federal sort of security vibe of like convincing people these are
Yeah.
safe things that are real, that
Absolutely.
you know, they tend to be a little more skeptical than just like
Yeah.
your startup
Yeah.
fanboys kind of vibe.
Yeah.
It was not that. So it was always, I mean, I remember the security
Yep.
team that built the security tooling in a lot of Docker stuff and in Swarm being
Yeah.
there and like in full force, like representing the
Yeah.
security side of
Diego
Docker.
and
Yeah. Ooh, Diego.
Nathaniel. Nathaniel.
Yeah,
Neat.
that's a good question. I know exactly what you're talking about. He had the bushy hair.
Yeah.
They were all super chill, cool people.
Yeah.
Every time
Yeah.
I got a chance to hang out with them and learn more about how the internal security worked, because I was always very interested in like the automatic key generation, the node to node mutual TLS,
Yeah.
like how overlays really worked, and
Yeah.
gossip networks, and all these things that like I had no idea. Like, they all were magic to me at the time of like
Yeah.
how does Docker suddenly communicate across servers securely. And so, yeah, that was a good time.
That was a good time.
So did you ever
So
decide if you had any topics for today? Because I have a whole bunch I want to talk about, but
let,
I don't want to railroad you with like all of what I've been working on. I'm like, I want to give you a chance.
yeah, I think so. These are my opinions and not that of my employer, Amazon Web Services. Today on the show, um, I have some topics, but you piqued my interest right before we started the live stream, where you were going to show or demo or
Yeah.
explain something to me.
Um,
And unlike previous times we've talked, we're actually saving the awesome conversation for the
this is
live
not a
show.
reenactment.
We're not a reenactment of a previous conversation. So,
So you don't have to act surprised or naive or
maybe
whatever.
I will.
Or
Yes.
yeah.
No acting. I've never acted on this show.
So, okay. Well, thank you for that wonderful intro. I am
Yes.
excited. I don't know why my AirPods suddenly new AirPods have come out, and now the ones I've had that have worked great are starting to act up because they're like, oh, my days are numbered. So you and I have been talking about Docker builds and Docker images and security and Slims versus Alpine and CVE scanning and all
Yeah.
that. We have been
Yeah.
talking about that for a decade.
Correct.
And it still feels like I find new things, and it still feels like I learn things that I realize are way more important than I thought, and that I've not been considering, and that I should be solving for my clients, for my students and my courses. Like I love it when I come up with like like a recommended real tactical production solution that I feel
Yes.
honest and genuine about advising, like telling the internet, you should do this and this will work for most people, or it should. And here's a free resource. I created stuff for you. Go do it. And then
Yep.
if someone shows up at a conference and tells me like I implemented this thing, or someone puts in a GitHub issue and says like like that's the best. That is the most wonderful feeling in the world, is when you've created something that makes someone else's job or work life or career better. And every once in a while, like every 5 years or so, I feel like I have something that I'm like, I can't wait to talk about this. This might just be that thing. I'm excited because I feel like it's a missing piece of the puzzle, and I am still trying to come up with ways to talk about it. And everyone's like,
Okay.
"Well, so what is it? What is it? What is it?"
What is it, Brad? You have me at
and
the edge of my seat.
I'm calling it silent builds. Okay.
Silent builds.
So
okay.
we all know that Docker Hub has official images, hundreds of images, at this over 200 images at this point, I believe, that are all very popular open source projects, languages, frameworks. And these things, even in the Alpine or the Slim images, come with an OS underneath them. It's either Debian or Alpine. And then we've had other attempts at like base OS container standards. Over the years, we've tried to create like container OSs. ChainGuard created Wolfie, which is essentially their container OS. And we've had them on the show multiple times to talk about like what Wolfie is and how that helps them create 0 CVE images. Yep. We don't yet have that for Debian, for Ubuntu, for Alpine. Like there's no like I mean I'm pretty sure that if I pulled down any image running Debian underneath, that there's going to be some vulnerability probably. Like it's going to be pretty rare when I'm actually 0. And that's just kind of like the nature of Linux right now. Like we can't update and guarantee and fix and then update and then roll out updates of everything all the time. So everyone's always managing like somewhere between 1 and infinity of CVEs in production.
At any given moment.
Any given moment. And the goal is to get that thing down as tight as possible and
on a rolling basis. Like
yeah, and then and the reality is it's all a moment in time. Like
correct.
The minute we scan something, it's only whatever you have to trust the scanner because they're all different. Some scanners are better than others at finding things. And at that moment in time, you have that security stance of how many CVEs you have. A minute later, you're now out of date. So you do your best. You take snapshots. Your security team maybe scans once a day or once a week or once a month or not at all, but maybe someday they'll scan. Or you scan only in CI and you kind of ignore it once it goes into production. So there's all these variations and everybody's trying all these different things. But I think when we all talk about containers, we all tend to agree that you build a container, you want the smallest image you can get away with. If you can go distroless, great. If you can do something like ChainGuard or a paid hardened image where you have support and guarantees, great. But that image is only great on the day that you last looked at it. Like when you last certified it or last scanned it and approved it. Every day since then, it's gotten worse, right? And the only way you're going to know how worse is to rescan it. So we now have these production tools. Like you can use Trivy, an open source tool for scanning for vulnerabilities in images, amongst other things, but in images. And then it can now scan a Kubernetes cluster. So you can get a posture of what's my images throughout the cluster and what are the CVE counts in production in real time. Because that's probably different than what your CI is telling you or what your local machine. So again, we all I think these are all known things. I think most people that are running Kubernetes today understand that, at least to some degree.
Yeah.
But, and they know that if I pin, which everybody tells you to pin, don't pin to latest, pin your images to Python 3.13.3
like,
or whatever.
So there's some determinism, like you're trying to achieve some determinism with the versioning, like what you can kind of control what's inside your container in that way.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You don't want to switch major versions on a random day when you're not prepared for anything, right? Anything in tech, any OS.
And just for context for our listeners, there's two main components because you're talking about something that's relevant both in the building of an image, right? The building of your application and at runtime. So you were talking about Trivy, for example, scanning an image, but it also can scan a cluster, which is kind of two separate modes, right? One is like the static build, the asset that's being built and scanning that. And then another view is like what's running, right? Like what's at runtime.
Yeah. And you don't we don't typically scan in the deployment pipeline for vulnerabilities, right? I don't consider CI a part of the deployment pipeline. I kind of look at testing
CI versus CD.
Right. To me, there's two sides of that coin, and the whether it's a PR or an Argo CD waiting to be deployed, it's that time when a human, maybe an AI if you're full, or maybe a robot if you're fully automated. But most companies I've seen, they automate everything except for the button to say go, and they're not quite ready to. Once a developer merges a PR, everything else after that is automated. And then at some point, 2 hours later, once CI is finished, it automatically deploys. Like most of the time I find that they there is a 1 to infinity minutes of CI. I'm going to stick with that theme. And then there's a moment where they're like, oh, okay, everything's ready. Are we ready? And then they click a button. And once you mature to the point where that button is no longer needed, then essentially what you're saying is that the minute that a developer merges a PR into their main or release branches of whatever code they're working on, you just have to like hope that in 2 hours, 3 hours, everything goes well whenever it's finished, right?
That's like, yes. And that's a question of trust.
Right. And a level of automation, because you got to trust whether your QA is valid or whether your testing is solid. Like, I get it. Not everybody's that automated.
Goals, right. And that's one of the goals. Like what you just described, like that removing of that button is kind of one of the goals of DevOps, right? Like one of the kind of pillars of DevOps is to get to something like that.
And it depends on who you are in your maturity scale, because most of the time when I'm working with companies, my goal is to just get to one button. Like my goal is usually when I walk in, there's 5 buttons, and then developers hate their lives. What's that?
The delete button, right?
Right. They don't have a they wish they had a delete button, but like they have. DevOps has unfortunately, and Kubernetes in particular, has come for software developers in a way that was unfortunate. And sometimes I feel like I got to apologize for my DevOps and ops brethren, because we came to them with this goal, these wonderful tools, but we accidentally, and we didn't really do this. I feel like it was like a universal industry failure, that we accidentally burdened the software creator with the burden of deployment and operations, and I don't think that was ever intentional. I don't think the goal of DevOps was not to give the work of ops to the devs. It wasn't to give work. It was to help us collaborate. That's my opinion. But
yeah. So that's very interesting, because there is a parallel message, and maybe it's related, which is, you build it, you own it. Like the SRE kind of attitude is, if you want to align incentives on fixing your applications when they go down, then you make the people that are building the application responsible for the operations, and then they'll be more aligned to make sure that their stuff is working really well, right? Then it can be bought into the automation, because you're kind of putting if the end goal is quality or whatever it is, right? Like feature velocity or whatnot,
right?
Then you work backwards from that, and if that means that there's a failure, which that inevitably will happen, if operations and dev are not aligned, then there's no incentive for the devs to get any better at whatever, and just throw it over the fence to operations. Like any failure is an operation problem.
Sorry. Yeah, I certainly didn't want to imply that it's two separate groups. I guess what I mean is there's a limit to the expertise any one individual can have, and
absolutely,
in a team,
and that's fair. That's valid.
And in a team, I do see a lot of like people that are not traditionally infrastructure people being saddled with infrastructure responsibility. I absolutely love teams where I'm like the more infrastructure oriented engineer in the team, and I have that background, and not everyone has to have it, and they can focus on features, front end, back end. We might have access to a full-time DBA somewhere, but that we operate in like, I don't know whatever terms you want to use. You can call them teams, guilds, whatever. You might have this loose association where I'm helping you write the YAML so that you don't also have to know how a pod spec's supposed to look, And but you're still like, if your code, like we're deploying it together, you're the app writer, I'm the infrastructure manager, whatever, and we are doing it together. You are still going to get a call, a pager duty when it goes down, but you don't have to be the CVE removal expert. Hence this conversation. So
let's get back to the silent build.
So silent builds. So most people understand the dynamics of containers today are that we are packaging up software into a container, and that all the dependencies, everything down except the kernel and hardware drivers, are in that image. Thus, there are going to be a bunch of things in there that have CVEs that you do not see when you have Dependabot or Renovate look for dependencies of your Node or your Ruby or your Java app, right? You have like this layer of your app vulnerabilities and dependencies all, that you have to manage and update to secure. And Dependabot and Renovate are both really good at automating you with PRs to say, hey, I run a bunch of Node.js examples on my courses, and the litany of weekly NPM vulnerability patches that I have to update my silly demos with is exhausting, and I just do demos. Like, I don't normally maintain customer infrastructure that I'm helping them with. That's their job. So it's just a nonstop onslaught.
There was a supply chain attack. There was a big NPM thing that happened recently.
It was actually 3. And everybody got confused between which one was which. And I did a meetup talk last week about Singularity. So I talked, and the TJ attack. So
even though
that's a different show, though. That's a different show. We could talk about all that.
But it is still kind of relevant to this discussion, to what you're talking about, which is like, we haven't solved this. Like, this is still like a present issue.
Yeah. So like, if you came to me as a boss might come to their dev engineer or their DevOps engineer and say, I want you to give me strategies so that we can implement projects that will reduce the CVE count across our production infrastructure by 90%. Like my target, my stretch goal is 90%. My goal is 50%. Please give me a strategy. And so you're going to end up with these strategy plans around, obviously there's the host OS, and that's a whole other thing. I'm really just going to talk about container images. But you had this whole minification effort, but that's not enough, because minification reduces the amount of blast radius, but you still have to have things like the application layer dependencies. Like if your developers aren't updating their dependencies in their app, their gems, their jars, like they're not updating all these things, then I, as the infrastructure manager, can only do so much. I can't remove the latest NPM injection vulnerability or whatever, where packages have been replaced, which just happened in the last month, and suddenly everybody gets downloaded on their servers, and it's scanning for secrets and sending them up to the internet. That was called Singularity, and it happened, and for 4 hours, every time you installed this very popular package, that was happening to whatever machine you installed it on, and the reaction and the rush for everyone to properly deal with this issue, NPM, GitHub Actions, like all these places, they all did great, but still, for 4 hours, like it was probably downloaded thousands of times. I don't know if anybody did the analysis on that, but you're going to have your application, like the team knows that that's their job, is to reduce the number of CVEs. So Dependabot and Renovate largely are the automation tools we all use to solve that problem for application developers. For us infrastructure people, it's all about minimal base images. Like that's the best we can add to that workload, and say, like, yeah. So like, where a lot of people move to Alpine, or they buy ChainGuard, or So, or they go to Slim, and they learn about Slim versus like normal Python or normal Ruby images or whatever.
Right.
And so that, again, only gets you so far, because the minute you move to that Slim or that minimal, it's really only about how fast you update that when a new one comes out. That becomes the next big problem. If you update today and you're on this minimal image and you're super lean on your Slim images, great. But tomorrow your CVE count probably went up in production, or the day after it'll go up. One of the days here pretty soon you will have more. And so your job then is, okay, how do I update faster? Like if that lower image, if that Alpine base image 3.12 or whatever is in all my images as what we call the base image, then maybe my job is now to make sure that's always fresh. That's always the latest version.
Yep.
Dependabot and Renovate can also help with that. They now can manage Helm chart updates automatically, Kubernetes, compose, Docker files, customize, like basically any way you want to deliver a container in infrastructure code. Those two tools will tell you about a new version.
Right.
So when you go from Python 3.13.0 to Python 3.13.1, Presumably that .1 was a CVE fix or a bug fix, maybe not a security bug, but a bug fix. If we're all following Simver,
Something is fixed.
something is fixed. Hopefully nothing will break, but something is fixed. And so generally a lot of teams either have the stance of we're going to pin to Python 3.13 and we're going to have Dependabot and Renovate just kind of run every day. They tend to run only once a day. So the best I can get is the day that Alpine releases a new base image, or Ubuntu or Debian or the latest Postgres, like whatever that base image gets updated to a new version, those two tools, one of those two tools will tell me, they kind of do the same thing. That will give me a PR, and then it's all about how fast can I click the button and then how fast can I deploy. So You're shortening the window between CVE detected and CVE fixed in production.
Right.
There is, okay, that is like half of my talk is to say this is where we were. Now the line has moved. It was always moved. I just didn't always know it. It wasn't until about 5 years ago.
Wait a minute. Okay.
Because the line has moved.
What you just described, even for organizations today, would be
a lot.
Would be great.
Sophisticated.
It would be sophisticated.
But it's not the pinnacle. It's not enough. There are things happening, and I'm calling them silent rebuilds. Okay. This has always happened. At some point in every container engineer's career, they realize this is happening because it's not shouted from the rooftops, I don't think. Claude and ChatGPT, neither one of them could find significant discussions about this problem in anywhere on the internet, except for one tool from one company. ChainGuard made Digestibot. Digestibot is like Dependabot and Renovate, but it only does one thing.
Okay.
When Python 3.13.1 gets rebuilt
by the person
Docker
that owns
Hub.
That. Yeah, okay.
By Docker Hub. That image doesn't stay the same. If most engineers, if I were to ask them, I bet you I'd get 50% or better. If I said, if you were to go and download Python 3.13.1 today, and you then downloaded that image in a month, would it be the identical image?
With just that tag, not like
that
the
tag,
SHA hash
the most specific tag you can get.
Okay.
I'm not trying to put you on pressure. I'm not trying.
No. I know. I understand. I want to make sure that we're explaining this properly because there's a gigantic amount of nuance about what you're about to talk about. So I'm trying to anticipate what you're going to say. So this is what happens when we don't pre-discuss our show. Okay. So I'm not going to spoil the ending here. I think I understand where this headed, but just to reiterate to our audience, you're talking about and if you want to pull up, I don't know if you have screen share enabled today, but if you go to Docker Hub, right? And Python's a perfect example because there's so much machine learning stuff going on.
I am picking on it.
Those workloads are insanely sensitive to the versions of minor versions of a bunch of libraries, right? So I've definitely been in this position where I need a very specific version of Python in a container. So I go and I say from, Python, what did you say? 3.13.
3.13 dot something, 3.13.3.
And so, that's what I put as my base image. And then I, do CUDA and all this other stuff that I need to put into the notebook or whatever container image. So what you're saying is I go ahead and build my image with that from, that base image. I'm assuming if I change something in my application code, but I'm not changing that from base image, but I don't have it in my local registry, I don't have it cached, I do a no cache. A week later, I rebuild. In theory, it should be the exact same thing, except for the application code changes. Let's just assume I don't even touch anything in the application code, right? All that's the same. You're saying that if the next day or the 2 days later or a week later, and I redo that, it's non-deterministic. That build is not the same.
Right.
even though I've done all the best practices to ensure that I'm thinking, making this as deterministic as possible.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Right. I'm saying that there.
I will find out that there's differences for some reason.
Yeah. If you were to like do, like an.
Like
if you were to hash it, if you were manually hash the image, it would be a different hash. There's a reason.
Okay.
And that is because I think a very underrated little known fact. We know that tags are mutable, not immutable, but mutable. All official images, as far as I know, all official Docker Hub images are mutable. Docker Hub, as well as Harbor, both have the option for you as an individual in your images to make the tags immutable, which means the minute I make that tag for any image, I can never reuse that tag for any other image build. That's a new option in Docker Hub. You can go in and say for my organization and make them immutable. But official images are mutable.
I think that's also in ECR. Yeah, it's also in ECR.
It's probably, keep going. Yeah, it's probably got to be. I mean, because Python runs on something in that image, whether it's Debian or Wolfie or Alpine. Right. Python changes at a different speed than the underlying. We don't tag, and in most cases, there are some that we do. Some of the official images in Docker Hub are tagged where you can see the version of the app that's running on it, like Postgres, and then the version of Alpine underneath it. At least to minor version, not patch version. Okay, so you could then pin to, and then when we have Debian, a lot of times what you'll see is like we got bookmark, and then that's the version of Debian underneath, and then there's a new version of Debian, and for some reason we don't use the symtag versions of Debian. We always use it seems like in Docker Hub we always use the what do we call those? The friendly names, the fun names. The code names, I don't know what you want to call them. The handle,
product names.
I don't know. So we've had Bookworm. We've had a lot of other ones, and those two move at different speeds. So you could then try to pin to a tag that is both the version of Postgres that you might need to use and the version of Alpine that you want to stick to, because I don't know why you would do this, but because you would. You want to be as deterministic as possible, but even that's not enough, because underneath each one of those tags, even though they're pinned to both, it's still mutable, meaning that Docker rebuilds the image when the underlying OS part changes, and they don't tell you about it. This isn't a conspiracy. I'm not saying they just don't have a good way to communicate.
There's no UX for it.
Right. The UX is staring at digest lists. That's the UX, is looking at SHA-1 hashes and timestamps and knowing when you last pulled it versus what the one is today if you pulled it again. Okay? And just before the show, I'm going to shout out to Eric Smalling at ChainGuard. He let me know that their particular tool, Chain Control, they have this archive of tracking every digest for every tag. There's a limit to the what they do, but they track this. Okay? So I will just prove this theory. Wrong screen. Okay. Wrong screen. Wrong screen. Okay. I'm going to go into this screen, and then I'm going to click screen share and say...
By the way, Eric showed up in the chat. So, hey, Eric. Shout out.
He wants to hear what I'm going to tell him about. This is all, by the way, if you're watching, this is like a spoiler for... it's part of a spoiler, but we're not going to really be able to spend as much time. But next week, Eric and I are hosting a free event. I will put this in chat, and we're going to talk all about this. We're going to go through the problem and the solution in a much more refined way with pictures.
Awesome. Yeah, this is the teaser. This is
the teaser. And I will just put this in chat for anyone that's watching. I don't actually think it's in the description, but there's this free event that we're putting on. It's going to be at least an hour. We might go a little bit long, but it's going to talk about this in great detail. So here's their chain control tool that's going to pull their history of them essentially polling. I don't know exactly how they get this data, but my guess is if I actually spent the week building a tool, I have all these tabs because I was using Claude Code to build a tool I'm calling Tag Tracker, which will do this for me. So it's going to run every day, and it's going to download all my favorite images and all different variations of their tag, whether it's Python 3, Python 3.18, Python 3.18.3,
whatever.
Like it's going to get them all. And then it's going to track the digest. And if the digest changes, it makes a log entry. Okay. So they have this tool and they already do this. So they actually, we've been doing this all along. And so the Python 3.13.8 image, the most specific pinned image you can have, has had 4 builds in the time that it's existed. So it was built 10.7, 10.8, 10.9, and 10.13. So which one are you running when you decided to pull Python 3.13.8 in production?
I'd have to look at the digest and compare.
Yeah. Now, good news is Kubernetes and Swarm, the 2 orchestrators that I care about, they are smart enough at least to resolve that tag to the digest. And the digest is for those not aware, the digest is a content guarantee that you will always, if you use the digest, it's in theory nearly impossible to have a collision of that name, and so it is a unique content addressable string that was the whole premise and basis for how we build Docker images and how we store them in registries and how we run them. So the cool thing is Kubernetes and Swarm both will, if you say give me this version of Python, they will at least ensure that the exact same digest is on every node. Right, so that like when you run it, you're getting the same version.
Think about that.
The same bit.
Because you could have,
right?
Like if you were running,
this wasn't always the case, by the way. It didn't.
If you were spinning up a new node, like you had a node with this Python thing, Python app, on 10.08, and then in your in your EKS cluster or whatever, you spun up a new node the next day.
Yeah,
it could be.
And this used to be able to happen. There was a day where the orchestration was not always resolving the digest before it issued commands to each node to download an image, right? Like it might have been resolving individually or not resolving at all. Like, I mean, at some point, you have to resolve this inside of Containerd and Dockerd, and like the low level tooling always does this because it has to pull down these tarballs and it has to get them from a source. But somewhere there's a human that types in a number and then the computer converts it into the digest at some point and everything we use. So then what happens is when someone learns this, they go, oh, well, I was told to pin to digests. So they can use tools to go in their Docker files and then pin to the digest. And the way you can do this, I actually made a blog post.
But the challenge there is we want human readable version tags, right? Like we don't communicate. Like I don't say, oh, you need to, the prerequisite for this is Python digest, blah, 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 F13 or something. Like that's not how we communicate about versions or what we need, right?
Yes. And that is the problem. That the way you get around that problem, at least this is how I do it, is some people don't realize that in the from line, you can specify the tag and the digest together. Now, when you do it this way, the tag becomes useless to the machine. The machine does not care about the tag anymore. You could put whatever tag you want in there. But the tag is like documentation. It's like a comment for the humans to know that this is the tag that I intended and the digest was resolved by the computer. Now, there's tooling that can give you this SHA hash and then will update when the Python version updates, it will make sure that the SHA hash is the correct one. But none of these tools we've mentioned so far will, on 10.7, you have this like if I'm running ARM on my servers, let's say I'm really cool and I'm running the latest ARM image. So when I created my cluster and I deployed, I was on this one. But then a week later, I realized, oh, there's this new version. And we can talk about why, which is, I think, in almost all cases related to CVEs or bug fixes. These are rebuilt because the underlying OS updates. And so it's rebuilding to reduce the CVEs, which means you need to be on the latest one. You need to be sure that you're on the latest build of every image, even though the tag hasn't changed. And you need to be aware of this. You need to have PRs that are automated for this, and you need to be redeploying these. Because yesterday, High Fivers group. Okay, so if you don't know about High Fivers, this is a little ad. High Fivers is a group of DevOps professionals, and we all meet once a month in Discord, and we have a video call, and we complain about our jobs. No, we actually talk about DevOps and the problems we're having and the solutions, and we talk about Kubernetes and containers. So if you're interested in High Fivers, you can be a member in this channel and pick High Fivers. You can join us once a month. It costs it for a cup of coffee. You get to join and have and learn. And that's the whole point I have that group. I'm thinking of renaming it to the Agentic DevOps Guild to make it sound like we're some sort of superheroes. But that's a thing we do. So yesterday we did that for this month. And I was listening to one of our regulars, and Brandon was talking about having this exact same problem at work, but not realizing the core problem of it and the actual best solution of it. And so what they had was they were going microservices. When they go microservices, that the effect of that sometimes is then they were going so specific with their microservices that they were making a microservice per verb, not just per endpoint, but per verb. Okay. Wow. Crazy.
That's a choice.
But hey, yeah, I mean, carpe diem. So they, and that is not a wrong decision in the right conditions in the right state. But what happens is that means that you're writing code that doesn't need to change very often. So you're pinning to whatever, let's say it's a Golang thing, right? You're pinning Golang or you're pinning Java. And so you have that image, but the code's kind of done. Like we've got 1,000 lines of code or whatever, we're kind of done. And so it sits there. It becomes stale on the servers. For lots of us that are deploying cloud native apps, the developers are constantly developing. So the images get refreshed pretty quickly all the time in production, so they don't age. But what about your daemon sets, your Postgres, your MySQL,
like
your
everything.
Redis?
There's like all this other stuff.
There's this other stuff that just sits there. It just sits there. And every day it sits there running, it's getting more CVEs over time. Like there's no way to avoid it. I don't care what you're running. It's going to have CVEs eventually. So we get back to this core problem of this thing is being rebuilt for the good of the internet. And no one knows that it's being rebuilt. That's why I call it silent rebuilds. Okay?
Interesting.
And there's no good, outside of one tool from one security company, I can't get an email about this. There's no mechanism by which I'm notified. Argo CD doesn't help me. Dependabot doesn't help me. Renovate doesn't help me. I read through the documentation on Renovate yesterday just to make sure. And they're like, they do not care. Like this is nowhere in their wheelhouse. If I shout from the rooftops enough, maybe I can get some PRs done in some of these tools. But I'm immutable, sir. This is not the latest Nirmal. I see you guys.
We're having a great conversation in the chat.
So I'm clearly on a soapbox moment, right? Because I have known this for 5 years and I haven't cared enough. And it wasn't until Eric and I started hanging out and talking about what are we going to do for this piece of content that we're going to create together. And I started to care because I realized that I could buy all the chain guard images and spend however much money I want to spend, unlimited amounts of money to buy every image I could possibly imagine. And then I could deploy those into production on day 1 with 0 CVEs. And on day 2, they now have CVEs. Right. What do I do then? What's my plan?
Right. Yeah.
And Chain Guard, their answer to that is they literally rebuild every day. Like according to Eric, I'll put him on the spot. They rebuild every day. They are just constantly rebuilding.
So if this doesn't seem interesting to you and you're operating container environments, this is super important. because this should be part of that strategy that you started this conversation with, right? Like, how do you answer that question if you're being gold on being in a better security posture, which part of that would be removing as many CVEs as possible in whatever window of time you're tracking it in.
Yeah.
And if you want to learn more info, because I think you just barely scratched the surface on this topic with me today, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But check out the event, bretfisher.com/chainguard event. And you're going to go deep into this, right? With Eric.
Right. Well, more importantly, we're going to focus a lot on the solution. So yeah. So next week we're gonna walk through maybe a shorter version of what you just had to endure, and then we're going to talk about Digestibot. I keep my head; these live in the same place in my head. Digestibot, and its one purpose is to track the upstream base image. Well, it's a GitHub action, and it will track the tag, waiting for a new digest, and then we'll give you a PR for the new digest.
Awesome.
So it's to me, it feels like it's a very useful tool. Solves a very specific niche problem. It is very much a Unix type style, solve one problem, do it great kind of thing. But I feel like in the quest for us moving to zero CVE, like the eternal quest that shall maybe never be fully realized, because we're still crawling everything. The North Star. CVE and CVE publication is random. CVE fixes are random. Upstream happens at random times. So at any minute of any day, there are many things in the works. And eventually it arrives at the base image that you are not building, but you are using from some base image provider. And that moment starts a race. When I imagine this, it's like I watched the F1 movie this summer. It was a great Brad Pitt movie. Loved it. Of course, if you got to be a Brad Pitt fan, but I think it was the movie of the summer. It was fantastic. And so I'm thinking of a Formula One scenario of the minute my upstream image is rebuilt to remove that CVE, it is a clock that is now my clock of how fast can I detect it, PR it, and push it to production, right? And that, for some teams, is never. It never happens. But as the maturity of your team improves and you get more automated and more sophisticated and you become aware even that some of these mechanisms exist, you start shortening that window to the point where ideally we're going to get to someday where things aren't polling anymore. Everything's webhooked. Everything is chained. And the way I understand, there's a great video on ChainGuard about how they build out their entire internal infrastructure, and it's largely based on GitHub Actions, a little bit of Argo CI, but it's largely GitHub Actions, and they build from everything from source. They build up everything deterministically. They can truly do reproducible builds, unlike a lot of what I see out there. They can and it's all very sophisticated and like top tier expert level stuff. The rest of us aren't that, right? The rest of us aren't like that. And they have other competitors. Like obviously Docker has hardened images so there's a lot of smart people. But you and I are not the smart people necessarily. We don't have to be that smart. My point is that they're doing that hard work. But because they're all providing us these updated digests because they're rebuilding it, like it's now on us now. Now that I've told you, it's on us. Because we now have the knowledge that it is in our job now to detect that difference and then do something about it. I've got to draw this diagram. We've got 3 minutes left, but like I need to figure out a way where we've got like an event. This is like the day the tag is invented, and it's 3.18.9, the day that it's invented, the epoch, and then there are events that happen, downstream, and there's a day where, okay, what's going on? A day. Back up. There's a day where that new digest happens, and then there's a day where you actually deploy it. And this I don't think this happens in a lot of organizations at all, because there's never an opportunity for them to update the digest of the same tag, because we've been yelling from the rooftops, pin to the SHA hash, pin to the digest. But when you do that, you've now actually created a new problem, because you're forcing yourself to a moment in time with a set of binaries that every day after get worse in terms of security. And so they're not aging like fine wine. They're aging like spoiled fruit.
I think there was good intent behind that.
Oh yeah.
Right?
It's like, not it's
removing
you have to still do it.
Removing non-determinism is a good intent.
Right. That's a good point. The way to solve this is
knowing...
not. Go ahead.
It's like pinning is still not like, I get what you mean. Like, but pinning is like half the problem. That's what you're kind of saying, or half of the solution. Right.
It's like you unintentionally create a side effect when you pin to a digest. And that is, there's no opportunity for your existing tools to deploy something newer. So like if you went to like 3.18, because a lot of teams, like especially I see that Node teams, especially teams that are just using Node to build a front end system, they're not actually running Node on a server, they just use it in CI. They pin to the minor version. They might just pin to the major version on a Node version, because they only need it to do JavaScript compilation and CSS minification and like stuff like that, right? So they don't really care as much as long as the original open source team obeys Simver rules and all that stuff, right? They don't break anything. So the problem is when you pin to that thing where you do this and then it looks like that, is that Docker and ChainGuard and GitHub and everyone who, and your AWS's public images, like I bet you they're all doing the same thing that Docker Hub originally did, which is, well, we've got a new version of the underlying OS. Let's go ahead and reduce the CVE count. Let's do the right thing and update the tags with a better CVE count. That's the right thing. But there is very little indication in the UI that ever happened.
Right. It's not communicated with the right language about the deterministic nature of that build.
Right.
Or the reproducible nature of that build. Well,
right, because you can see, like, when you look at all the tags, you see like dates. You're like rebuilt. You can see all these like built yesterday. But there's nothing that indicates this is the third variant or the third rebuild of this image. Imagine if it said like every time it rebuilt, it added something to the tag.
Like build
and so that you
one,
could see
build two, build
three. Build 3, build 5, yeah. Which they just don't do, and maybe they don't need to. Maybe that's not something we want to get into, because again, that doesn't really solve the problem. It just makes you more aware. It doesn't solve the problem. I think the eventual solution is Dependabot and Renovate, or whatever the tools we are all choosing to use for pinning to digests, should also be checking for new digests, because that's. Like, I don't know that this is a thing in traditional package managers. Like, when OS package managers rebuild an app, as far as I know, like an apt, when curl is changed in some fundamental way, it gets a new version. Because if you look at like apt tags, it's like the curl version and then something after, which is kind of like the apt variant, I think, and at least that's how I understand it. So I actually think that this is a pretty unique problem to container images, because they include app code and dependencies and OS code and dependencies, or OS package managers. I think it's because of the two bundled in one.
Multiple things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would love for someone to tell me I'm wrong, but
and multi-stage builds would introduce even another layer there.
Yeah. Still same problem. And so, I think eventually what we need is like for Digestibot's functionality to be implemented in the other dependency management tools, because otherwise I don't think we're going to solve this problem worldwide. Like, we're not going to get this out there. I think people know about, a lot of people that use GitHub know about Digestibot and Renovate. Last night at a local meetup for Azure people, or 2 nights ago, where I talked about this a little bit.
You mean?
Dependabot, yeah. they Dependabot and Renovate. A lot of people in the room are using Renovate. I'm a big Dependabot fan, but it seems like there's a lot more like at least in my worldview, there's a lot of Renovate people, a lot more than I expected.
Yeah.
Using Renovate, and anyway, I think that those are where we need to push for this kind of update. Otherwise, I don't think the world is going to realize that they're running on old stuff.
That seems like
so
the right spot.
you could be the most secure person in the world, and if you don't do this particular step, you're still going to have more CVEs in production than you should. Yeah. It's actually very little work to fix this. It's just knowing about it's the actual, I think, problem for everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Bret.
Woo!
Now I know what silent rebuilds are.
Silent rebuilds. I'm going to see.
Everyone that's,
we're going to see if that sticks.
I like it. Check out the event next week. Was that Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time? With Chain Guard. Check that out. I'm going to try my best to join the event and dig into this. It's super interesting to me, and hopefully all of you can check out that event and resolve an issue that until before this conversation I didn't know was an issue. That's amazing.
I even made a little graphic.
Ooh.
Like a logo. I tried to make it a logo.
Well, now it's done. Now it's for sure going to be a thing.
I tried to get ChatGPT to make this image and it kept getting it wrong, so I had to go manual and use I used Excalidraw like a
humans
true,
are still valuable.
Like a true engineer, I used a basic diagramming tool to create a logo.
All right.
All right, man. Well, thanks for
Bret.
being here.
Yeah. Check out Bret. You got a new course coming.
So yeah, we got all kinds of new stuff. I guess we should do some shout outs to things. We are both on a new podcast. If you haven't heard us, Agentic DevOps.fm.
We successfully did it, Bret. We didn't talk about Gen AI.
We waited to the very end to mention AI. Yeah, which I did tease in the show notes. I was like, well, maybe we'll talk about AI because we probably always talk about it.
So we have a home for our AI and agentic conversations at agenticdevops.fm. Check out that podcast. And the most recent episode, I believe, is the conversation we had with Laura Taco, which was, I mean, obviously we're biased, but truly one of the best episodes of a podcast that Bret and I have done together. Period.
Yes. I mean,
I cannot wait for another part of that conversation to happen.
It's a really good episode. I'm very proud of this episode. I think that most developers will find the information that Laura has valuable.
Yes. And, so if you're in an organization where your leadership is asking you to adopt Gen AI tools, or you're trying to figure out if adopting agentic and Gen AI tooling for any part of like the DevOps journey is valuable, Laura has answers for you. So check out our podcast episode. It's data-backed, anecdote-backed conversation. I cannot wait for us to do another one and dig in, because I think we got through like one of the many topics we wanted to talk about with her. But it was just phenomenal. Check out that episode. Then on top of that, Bret, what's your new course?
Yeah, so working on, this content we're talking about for the Digestibot is something that's going into my new GitHub Actions courses. And it's going to be a series of courses, starting with just being a GitHub Actions Pro. And then the second course is going to be about how to add on all the new AI features and AI actions into your GitHub Actions to hopefully automate things a little bit even better than what you would automate normally before Gen AI existed. So you can sign up on the website. You can just go to bretfisher.com, or I put a link in chat. It said Q3. I need to change that because it is no longer Q3. But that is active. So I need to stop learning new things and just put it all in the course and ship it. Because like this problem of the image manifest changes and the digest changes wasn't originally planned for the course. I only recently, like, I knew that this problem existed, but I didn't think about the significance of how it wasn't being addressed. And I remember when Digestibot came out, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, but I think it was last year. They announced it, and I was like, "Oh, that's a really cool idea. I should totally like talk about that." And then I forgot, right? Like I thought immediately, I thought it was valuable, and then I never did anything about it. And now I'm realizing, oh, this should be a critical component of any container DevOps engineer that manages containers. Like that, this needs to be a part of their workflow. So that's going to be in the course, along with a whole lot of other things. You can sign up on my website. Hopefully you'll love it. And you get free coupon, you get a discount and other free content as a part of signing up there. So,
and two more things. Check out the High Five Club that Bret mentioned earlier. It's an awesome little group of folks. Hopefully you can grow it. That meets up on a regular basis and goes beyond just complaining about their jobs. And then if you want to, if you have questions or want to dig into lots of different topics with a very supportive group of folks, check out our Discord, which is right above Bret's lovely face at discord.gg/devops. So
yes.
Check that out. And I think that covers almost everything.
And
the last thing's the newsletter.
And the newsletter. Where if you were on the newsletter at Bret.news, you would have got this email yesterday that I don't write long emails very often. And this one wasn't super long, but it explains this problem in a much more concise way. So,
so you didn't read from this email when you were explaining it to me.
I should have read from it. It would have saved us a lot of time. I think it doesn't have a bunch of dumb analogies and side ramps or side stories.
No dumb analogies.
Well, dude, thanks so much for being here. I know you got to run.
Yes.
This may or may not become a podcast on our other podcast, DevOps and Docker Talk. I have two podcasts and all the podcast players now. Nirmal's on both of them. We just have different topics on each one. So
yes.
If you're at all an engineer working with containers and Kubernetes and Docker at all, like both of them still apply to you. They're very applicable. And we will be back. Next week. I don't know what the show's going to be, but if you come on Wednesday, you might find out about what's going to happen on Thursday on the live stream.
Yes.
And we will both see you on the internet and hang out in Discord with us. So, ciao, everyone.
Awesome. Bye.
See ya.